Okay, I think we're good to go. Good afternoon and welcome everyone. I welcome you all to the 13th WISE event, the Women in Science event on behalf of Punjab University, Chandigarh and INYAS. We are very happy today because today we have with us Dr. Pratibha Jolly, who has served as the principal Miranda House, a premier college for women at University of Delhi, a post she held for 14 years from April 2005 till February 2019. In fact, under her dynamic leadership, Miranda House received All India Rank 1 under National Institutional Ranking Framework, a feat sustained for 5 successive years from 2017 to 2021. A rare honor, Dr. Jolly was conferred the prestigious Icpe Medal 2020 for her contributions to physics education with international outreach. She was chairperson of the International Commission of Physics Education, ICPE, Commission 14 of the Apex International Union for Pure and Applied Physics for 6 years from October 2005 to 2011, having served as member first from 2002 to 2005. She was also vice president of IUPAP from 2005 to 8. The high point of her tenure was launch of Physware series of active learning, educate the educator workshops to strengthen teaching of physics, especially in the developing world. She has also served as a member, National Liaison Committee, IUPAP 2008 to 11. Dr. Jolly served from 2012 to 17 on the Scientific Advisory Committee to the Cabinet constituted by the Principal Scientific Advisor to the Government of India. And she also recently contributed to the National Science, Technology and Innovation Policy 2020 framework as co-chair of the thematic group Education. Dr. Jolly has had several pioneering research projects to her credit. Having served as the member of the Executive Council and General Council of National Assessment and Accreditation Council, NAC, she has recently joined NAC as academic consultant. Dr. Jolly has conceptualized the program Gender Advancement for Transforming Institutions, better known as GATI, recently launched as a pilot by the Department of Science and Technology. GATI is a novel intervention for gender equity in STEM disciplines. With the launch of GATI, India joins other international gender equality charters. As principal investigator, she is developing an innovative gender equity framework for self-assessment and accreditation of institutions for higher education and research. In fact, in her lecture, she will tell us more about this GATI program and also about her own scientific journey. So I will now stop here. I will not come in between you and ma'am, and I will request Dr. Pratibha Jolly, who has taken out time from her extremely busy schedule, and we are so thankful to her for that. And now I welcome Dr. Pratibha Jolly to kindly deliver her 13th Women in Science lecture. Ma'am, please.
Thank you so much, Nishima, Dr. Wangu, and other young, bright scientists from INYAS and other places. Thank you very much to Punjab University, Chandigarh. I have spoken earlier many times at PU, and so it's a pleasure to be here today. Thanks again, and allow me just 1 minute before, and let me launch my screen, and then we are on our way.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Just need to get this minimized. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much once again. And I think before I begin my talk, I would like, so I'm going to be talking today about equal science. Nishima has already spoken about gender equity, and I do think it's a very important issue, as we can see that you're already on a 13th event for Women in Science. and they have been very distinguished speakers. So let me begin by paying tribute actually to the women scientists who've been on forefront of COVID. The resilience our country and internationally science has shown has been tremendous. The 6 women that I can very quickly point out who have led research that has actually saved, pulled us out from the pandemic, whether it is Covaxin from Bharat Biotech, or Covishield, as we are using, Oxford AstraZeneca, Sarah Gilbert, everyone has heard about, Pfizer's mRNA vaccine. Also, Novavax is led by NRI Neeta Patel. Sputnik is led again by a woman, and Moderna by a woman of color, in fact, which is quite a challenge in the US and so on. And as we hit the pandemic, leading critical research and innovation were women, because suddenly you found that, India was largely unprepared. And at National Institute of Virology at that point, the first ELISA testing kit was developed, which is, it isolated the virus. And Priya had at that point just taken over as director. And at my lab's Discovery Solutions, Minal Bhosle, in fact, completed an indigenous evaluation kit, and at a cost of just 1,200, giving results in about 2.5 hours. And next day, she delivered her baby. And she said this was a time to work and develop a test for the country. So women have been on the frontiers, and they have been very resilient. We have had Dr. Renu Sarup, former Secretary DBT, also for a short spell Secretary of DST, and Soumya Swaminathan on the international scenario, all working together, each for equal, the famous movement that was started recently. So we have been celebrating women scientists, as you too on this platform have had many speakers, and are largely aware of the wonderful work that is happening, and women's representation on all aspects of frontiers of science. You just name any one discipline and you will find talent. The woman talent is in abundance, and I'm sure it is also spread in this audience today. But yet there remains a question. And that question is, there's always a doubt that women cannot just do science to the same level as their male colleagues can, and that the number of trailblazers, women who are right up there, is not sufficient. And perhaps that number, if you were to go by the fact that 50% is what we should be aiming for gender parity, there is enough reason for us to worry. But talent is in abundance. The problem is that there aren't enough numbers where they should be. So there are so many cultural barriers to that. You have this famous David, the man as a thinker, but I always was hunting for woman as a thinker. And then I did find her sitting somewhere in a park in Buenos Aires, carved in stone, and another bronze sculpture. So there is so much of centuries of inherent bias and lack of opportunities that women have to overcome and make their well-deserved place on the high table. I have another favorite, which is the mural adorning the entrance of National University of Athens, which depicts the sciences as women, whether it be medicine, theology, astronomy, or physics. And this is a beautiful mural. And, if we also were to look into our own history, we'll find many examples of women having occupied important positions in sciences, or even the science being depicted as a woman. In fact, if you were to look at what are the attributes or characteristics that any scientist would have, you'd find that the gestalt is there. Whether in this picture you see a beautiful young woman or you see an old woman, it is how you perceive and how you first absorb this this illustration. But successful scientists and successful entrepreneurs share many traits attitudes, and skills. And basic science always underpins technological innovations. So it is rather difficult often, and especially in today's world, to draw a line between what would be science, what would be technology. And scientists have to span the world of technology, and likewise, because so much of our tools and techniques today depend on high-end technology. So a woman scientist also has to be on the forefronts of technology, especially as we look at disruptive technologies. And women entrepreneurship, we know, comes naturally to women. They're born entrepreneurs, they nurture life. If we were to look at all these wonderful patterns, whether it be a patola or a weave, a handloom, or let us say even cane weaving, there is no algorithm that women follow. I mean, they just sit and they weave complex patterns without having a written algorithm or pattern in front of them. They've done it for ages. And it is almost like Indian music, which we never do have a script in front of us. So especially in India, there is a strong sense of entrepreneurship. And as nurturers, women have been very, very artistic, aesthetic, and innovative. And is this not science? In fact, if you were to look at one of my favorite images, and I use it frequently, is of the Ima market of Manipur, which is the women's largest market, about 500 years old, has about 4,000 women traders, and is still going strong. And you look at the range of where the women have and their business models, and you know that they not only are able to grow, they produce, they weave, they innovate, they create, and then the products are marketed, and the complete cycle is what is managed by women. We see enough women in agriculture, the invisible daughters of the soil, multiple roles as laborers, cultivators, entrepreneurs in many places. When men come down to the cities to look for urban jobs, it is the women who are the farmers, and they produce so much of our food, from 60 to 80%. And in rural areas, about 84% of women depend on agriculture. And however, they just earn a very small fraction of what the men would earn in a similar position, and they're not even recognized as farmers. So the traditional knowledge systems have been inherited by these women. And in fact, this year, why the reason I've included these slides is because this year the nation honored two such women with Padma Shri, the seat mother of India, Rahibai Somapopure, and she is a conservationist. So traditional knowledge systems are ever so important. I want to kind of highlight the fact that science assumes many shades, and it is very important that we link science to life, we link science to communities, and feel very confident about years and decades of, and in fact centuries of a tradition in which we can be steeped in science. So similarly, Tulasi Gowda, also an environmentalist from Karnataka working on plant diversity, was honored with the Padma Shri, received it just within this last month from the President of India. So if we look at what is happening in the country, we are on the move. Aspirations are running high, and whether it's first generation learners or economically marginalized and remote areas, both men and women, and especially women, are making it on their own merit in pursuit of higher education, and they have their dreams. And with this, they are moving. We have changing demographics, and today, the world is very different. We are far better networked, and with digital, as we have experienced during the pandemic, the entire method by which we negotiate knowledge, or we transact businesses, or we live our lives has changed. But for quite some time now, nation has a whole, as part of our national policies, we have been looking at expanding education, providing access to education, because it is not without that we are going to be able to be a developed country, or set our goals on multi-trillion economy and so on. Or at least because we do think that we have smart native, we have native intelligence, as I've just highlighted, and populations have traditional knowledge systems, but but we also are very, very much on the frontiers, whether it be our space programs or biotechnology and so on and so forth. You just see how we have participated in the vaccine research and so on. So our research ecosystem being very strong, it is very important also to expand the education system, school upwards, especially the higher education system, and also bring in those who have not so far been able to afford these but are now making it on their merit, access to excellent global education and so on. So this is a picture from Miranda House, the top college of the country. This is the face of the young women who have aspired and not dreamt of being scientists and being presidents of countries or companies and so on. And the diffident, they come from marginalized families, sometimes first generation learners, but learn anytime, anywhere. They are meeting this challenge and carving their life. By the time they are ready to leave the college in 3 years, they would look just like any one of us, because that is the kind of exponential change that their dreams lead them on, and their institution handholds them to develop into their persona and their give shape to their dreams and so on. So it is very important, whether it be in entrepreneurs or scientists, to bridge this aspirational gender gaps. This is a histogram of Fortune 500 companies, where you find that the number of women at the top is so small. It exponentially decreases from the low-level jobs as you go up. But very frequently, women also fall into stereotypes, and they think that they're quite okay with having micro ambitions or small microfinance businesses on a micro scale. But it is time now to shatter those kind of stereotypes or barriers even to our own dreams, and think big, move from low tech to high tech, and move beyond any constraint that may be there. Because today, those who are in the higher education system are to the millennium born. We are already almost 21 years into the century. So those who were born in this century are ready to hit the workforce, and they have a smart vocabulary. They're born to the internet. They have new ways of knowing, learning, sharing. So it is the social theories of it is a proximity with each other that allows them to learn. And now institutions have to reinvent themselves, because we are learning far better from our connectedness. And as a knowledge-based society, things have changed quite a lot. And the country also, as a part of its policy, is nurturing innovation. What we call as our startup story. Just this year, we have, is just very quickly moving on to having unicorns, which produce 1 billion turnover. And that number has been rising tremendously. We are second or third as far as startup go. But if you look at adult tinkering labs, makers labs, and also the fact that, everybody is being encouraged to adopt the innovative pathway, the world is very different today. And therefore, women have to relook at what kind of skills are necessary. So this is what I call as the moonshot generation, the moonshot thinking, where the young feel that they can aim at any global challenge. That NASA and other, when they're looking for ideas, they will ask the young people to ideate and come up with solutions to challenging problems. You recently had private entities go up into the space and are planning also trips to the moon and Mars and so on and so forth. So today's generation is challenging the status quo, and it thinks that nothing is science fiction, anything is possible, and that is the disruptive change. And this is where both men and women today have to function. So very early now, they are becoming scientifically literate, scientifically active, and creating and innovating. So very recently, the Times Top Innovator Kid of the Year was an NRI, Gitanjali Rao, and she's not alone. I mean, I probably have 10 such examples, and we also mentor our team that goes to participate in the International Science Engineering Fair. And young school students are performing to win grand challenges, leveraging disruptive technologies, and grand challenge, the award can be as big as $1 million or $75,000. And it is interesting to see how they are, this is the new generation of science leaders. They're already accessing science labs and doing very much. But my favorite will always be this picture of Dr. Abdul Kalam's Space Research Payload Cubes Challenge, where school kids from Aurangabad Municipal Corporation School also launched 100 small sats, and there were 6 girls and 4 boys. So, from early childhood, there are dreams of this new generation that the sky is not the limit. They are the Moonshot Generation. And why not? Because we have had women leading the Mangalayaan and now the Gaganyaan, as we will land a man on the moon. I wish it was a woman on the moon, but I love the Vyomitra, the beautiful robot that has been made and will accompany on that trip. So women have been leading innovation and breakthrough technologies, and none of these women come from elite IITs. They come from regional engineering colleges. They are the kind of women that I showed you earlier, maybe sitting on the lawns and with Wi-Fi connectivity, just thirsting for knowledge and thirsting to do something wonderful and pursuing their dream and so on. Even despite all these wonder stories that I very quickly narrated to you, and that women have it in them to just, reach anything, reach for their dreams and so on, the question they face at every point is, can't can women do science? This is a question that never leaves. And even when they do well, they keep questioning themselves, and they think they have to prove themselves again and again and again that they have it in them to be equal partners in the scientific pursuits and so on. But it is not for no reason that these doubts come. If you were to look at how the Nobel has honored women and their discoveries, there are some startling cases of women who deserved the Nobel but were denied it. They did not get it. And the reasons for that, of course, we can, many of you are aware, but that would be another story to tell. And so, we do see that the number of women in science who have been the laureates is just 3.7%, and that is really very sorry state. Last 2 years, women were getting the prizes, and so when felt that this year too there would be somebody who had at least one of the vaccine women, I was really waiting, with a bated breath that at least one of the vaccine women, the mRNA or any one of them, would get the Nobel, but it was not to be. So this year, in fact, there was no woman awarded in science a Nobel Prize. And exactly the same story repeated in our prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award. In 2020, there were 3 women who got it, Bushra Atiq in IIT Kanpur for medical, and Dr. Dash in chemical sciences, and Vasila Thirumalai from NCBS in biological science. Before that, Aditi Dev is the lone woman who got it in physics. But again this year, it was a score of 0 on 11, and the number of women awardees remains 3.7%. So whatever women are, however high we are aiming and moving, the number of women awardees continues to be small. And here is a very quick summary, beautiful slide from Nature India, which shows the top 7 science award across disciplines. And on the left of the vertical, you see the number of women who have been awarded, and you could just about forget about it, because it all tends to be about 3% or so, and it is just too little. And biology probably is a little better, and medical sciences, but in physical sciences, engineering, it is not good. So we all look at the World Economic Forum's report on how many years do we await for gender parity. Now, in school education, we are getting to be pretty high. in many parts of the world, 100% attainment of parity has been achieved up to 12 years. But even in India, we have moved up quite a lot in primary. But just to have access to education is not enough. What is the quality of that education and literacy? The state of education reports show we have a long way to go. But the overall gender gap, which also depends on the political and economic parameters, will take about 99 or 100 years for us to bridge. And this is very, very worrisome. So on all parameters, women have been denied parity and equity. We also know that one of the reasons that equity is elusive is women do not get equal pay. So unequal at work, I showed already for agriculture that 84% of the food being produced by women, but their share of income is far lower. It is an unpaid work, almost like housework, and so on. So in India, we have in fact moved down to about 23.4% according to ILO estimates. And the caregiving work women do for children or for families and old parents and so on, elders, is 21.7% against 1.55% for men. And the number of hours women have to spend, it is everybody's story. And I hope the pandemic has taught the other, the male counterparts also to chip in and do some work. But there are many things that have shown the cracks in equity and so on. In fact, violence has been on the increase and so on. So if you were also to look at the share of men and women by professional cluster, then women in light blue are doing pretty well for culture and people related jobs, and services and media and so on, or content production. But in technical roles, they just have, so far, depending on how we define these technical roles, they're about 49%. But the moment you come to data, which is the new big thing, then or artificial intelligence, the women's share happens to be close to 26%. Engineering, you are down to 15%, and cloud computing is just 12%. And considering that SaaS is the new way in which businesses are going to be conducted and so on, and much of our own scientific endeavors will require us to have the front end knowledge of many of these, women's share is pretty low. And this is where the jobs of the future are going to be. So let me summarize, therefore, and say that can we ignore the potential of women? And it is very clear that if the world is to progress, if families are to progress, if nations are to do well economically and politically, there is need for women to be equal participants. There's social need, because educated families only will be able to provide to us a sustainable world, and sustainable development goals require education for all, shelter for all, disaster management, and so on. So no poverty. So education is going to be very important. And economic growth and economic empowerment requires that women also are economically independent or contributing sufficient, and that there's equity and in pay, and there are no gender pay gaps in any profession. Now, as we look around us, transformation is happening all over. We have experienced it far more in the last 2 years of the pandemic. We ourselves are connected. We can see how efficient this has been, how I wouldn't say effortlessly, but how quickly everyone onboarded the digital, and how we have been able to leverage technology to great advantage. In fact, our meetings now are far more focused, And working from home also gives us, given that knowledge is so easily accessible, and my mobile phone today packs in more power than my desktop used to do at one point. So, it's a different world out there. But despite that, education is the hardest sector to reboot. Look at the way the new education policy is dreaming for the country, but nobody is really willing to experiment and look at it with an open mind on what is best way to learn, because these questions have not been answered sufficiently rigorously. There's not enough research done on that. And anyway, questions in how people learn best never stays solved. And that is why it's a gold mine area. And so much work needs to be done. The questions and answers are both local, and you need to, even if you want to transplant an education system from elsewhere, you can't. You have to adapt it to your own local needs. It is situated in the context, and that's what I mean, like the problems are never solved and so on. However, if education continues to advance one step at a time, it's going to fall exponentially behind the world for which it aims to prepare the learners. For instance, I've already said that jobs of the future are going to depend and require skills which are actually not being taught in our classrooms. So this is something that as educators, we have to be on leading edge of innovation. We have to be always on the leading edge of knowledge production, dissemination, synthesis, analysis. So the role of teachers is immense. And today now, you're finding that with the new ways of learning, and therefore there is so much of rebooting and relearning that has to take place. So that brings me to my own story and my own dissatisfaction with the education system, which I've just articulated in the last slide, that we tend to be laggards. We do not adopt either technology or new pedagogic innovation fast enough. In fact, we don't even stop to think whether someone that we are talking to or that we are teaching is on the same page, we are on the same wavelength, and so on. And I also feel I'm not talking, it's a monologue. I cannot now take questions. So Miranda House, with this beautiful corridor, so many films have been shot there, is a premier institution established in 1948, and it chronicles the history of women's education in the country. And the founding teachers were you have to nurture a little sapling, and that has to grow so that independent India will have a tremendous contribution from women, and women will have a voice and they will have a say in how the destiny of our country will shape itself and take shape. So as I've already said, has been said, it's a liberal education college, and humanities, social sciences has been pretty strong, and so has been basic sciences, and which started right at inception in 1948. And today, of course, they're close to 5,000 students, and it's a very beautiful red brick building, and you fall in love with it. And yes, it aims to produce women as thinkers, women as artists, women as performers, women as scientists, and just anything that a woman wants to be, So the emphasis has been on discussion and debate and creative pursuits and soft skills, as you call them, communication, and, thinking things through and not just having rote learning, and individual talent and celebrating diversity. So even before, special facilities for people with disability were talked about, we already had one of our alumni set up the first spastic society for India. And so, our alumni have a mind and they have a heart, and they contribute to society through social entrepreneurship and other academic and corporate roles. They engage with community and the real world problems. So it's an engaged institution. And our alumni have included Sheila Dikshit, the 3-time Chief Minister of Delhi, or Speaker of Parliament, or top novelist, or Meera Nair, or the maker of Sky is Pink and Shonali Bose, or Margarita with the Straw. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. Even the films that they make have a heart. They have a social cause underpinning them. And so if I look at it, almost every year there was a Padma Award given to a Merantian. So it's a great legacy. But a legacy that said that a woman with a voice is by definition a strong woman. But the search to find that voice can be remarkably difficult. We all know it from experience. And this is a quote by Melinda Gates, which I really like. And giving this voice to young women students, wherever they have come from, whatever the background, is important, because education is a great leveler. Over their own identity, we overlay another identity, which is the identity of their educational institution, the knowledge that they have acquired, and their dreams and what they will become. So I am also an alumna, and I began my teaching career at Miranda. I thought I'm going to be a scientist and go off to the US for my PhD, but for some personal reasons, I dropped my PhD admissions and I stayed back. And I wasn't very happy with the PhD that I did finally, but then I got a job pretty quickly and I started teaching and I hated it. I hated the traditional curriculum and those lectures. And having trained as a theoretician, I actually hated the lab, which was just a cookbook approach and algorithmic and so on. And then said that, well, if you don't like something, what do? You change it. And so I was lucky and fortunate that at that point, there was a small group of people who were thinking about new pedagogies, but at school level. And so I was very determined to do it at undergraduate level. And I got the first ever project from Department of Science Technology for 50,000 rupees in 1984, which was a lot of money at that point. And it was learning through investigative projects and a hands-on approach. So I learned electronics, I learned to fabricate instruments, and I learned to do a whole lot, but engaged entire class of Miranda House and St. Stephen's College also on the campus. And everybody did open-ended small science research projects, and sometimes they turned out to be pretty big science projects. And we developed a lot of products also. And everyone got a feel for work with your hands, design, work in teams, and so on. And it was a non-formal system that went beyond the classroom. And there, my dissatisfaction with teaching was both strengthened and also fructified, because I'd set up a parallel system where right after classes, all the students would just rush in to do their own science. And there was a lot of retention in science, and the flight of talent from science was somehow arrested. And I learned a lot because I was just a few steps ahead of this large cohort that was working on projects. And then I quit my permanent job to take a contractual post and be at the Department of Physics as a UGC research scientist. But I again had projects to set up and work on this. And then it was in 80s about integrating computers in teaching. And we began and created the first ever data acquisition system, sensor-based data acquisition system, very low cost, with student projects. And before Excel and all these user interfaced programs became popular, we had actually on a 256 kilobyte machine programmed and created some very sophisticated menu driven online lab facilities, etc. And that's when I was pulled out and told, go back to the college as a principal, walk the talk. It has to be mainstream, the work you are doing. And it can't just be that I'm happy with a lot of the bright young students without any publicity coming and working on projects. And it can't just be a Gurukul. You have to just go and walk the talk. And there I was, after 5 formative decades, thrown back to Miranda House. And I went back to my alma mater, which was a great institution, beautiful building, but everything was in disrepair. And we had to begin with the infrastructure. But this is where, since I'd already started doing science education research and developing innovative labs and active learning, and my interest was in how students learn and diverse student population, I was already doing teacher training programs. So this became my mandate, my agenda. And incidentally, I was also the principal, and we reinvented the infrastructure, and we were very lucky. And those 14 years are the story of reinvention of an already beautiful college, but which needed infrastructure, upgradation, renovation, and brick by brick, project by project, we got there, and so on. So my work has been on designing active learning environments. And as I've told you, I thought that as an accelerated student, I would be a PhD in one of the best university in US, and then, I would continue my research. But life has other things in store. And as I said, I was pretty much dissatisfied with my traditional classrooms, but then I subverted that and I was able to create something that was very innovative. And then the idea was, how do you mainstream it, and so on. So action research as agenda for change, and all this became a mission. There was no time to think of anything except that there was so much to do. And as I said, anywhere you look, there is a problem, and that problem needs to be solved. And we built communities of practice with a shared vocabulary and critical mass. And I had many, many international collaborators. And as you know, as Nishima has told you, I was fortunate that I was able to collaborate with the best physics education research groups at tertiary levels across the US and in Europe. And I was also on the commission, and we were therefore doing active learning workshops for teachers and teacher training across the world. And that is what has been recognized. And just when I, got back as principal, the government then wanted me to set up a research and innovation in science education center. And I said, you don't jump jobs every second day, I have just come in here. And so we established this within Miranda House, and that was a game changer for the college. This again pursued research in science education, but most importantly, it built capacity of teachers, and it built a critical mass of faculty that were now aware, and we were able to get best equipment and resources anywhere in the world. And we did a lot of outreach extension programs for schools, and also invited other colleges, and our labs were open in summer for flavor of research summer camps. And we did this for the 14 years that I was there, and I think it continues. But faculty was nudged to begin research, and already seed grants were provided and top end equipment got, especially for the life sciences and chemistry. And then they were able to do some work and write research grants, and maybe they brought in tenfold the kind of investment that I as an administrator made for them without their asking, and nudging them to do this. The whole ecosystem changed, and young students also started doing undergraduate research, and teams of students and teachers started doing research together. So we enhanced our classroom teaching with an active learning environment which was hands-on, but more importantly, it was minds-on. It was a problem-solving approach. And far more importantly, we leveraged the new ways of learning and sharing, and the social interactions were very important. Collaboration was important, and our entire learning environment was also hearts-on. Already it's a beautiful college, and you just fall in love with it when you move first time you enter. But then within a heritage building of 48, we had state-of-the-art equipment, state-of-the-art facilities, and state-of-the-art teaching learning environments. So, as I've already said, undergraduate research, development of innovative resources became very important. Early professional development of young students became important, so that they had the robust self-image and learn to work together. And especially because this is an all-women college, working with women is very, very, for women to collaborate is very important. But it was not a cloister. As I told you, anyone from any other college, both boys and girls, could come in. And beyond the classroom activities, brought in some of the top scientists, not just nationally, but internationally, to the college, including Nobel laureates. And action research became a mechanism for pedagogic innovation, where the teacher must commingle the role of being a curriculum developer, and education researcher, in addition to being a teacher and a collaborator for active learning with students and so on. So we promoted the pedagogies for global competence through group-based project work and structured debate and argumentation and service learning. So project-based learning and cognitive apprenticeship was important. So this is my journey because I continue to work with teams on projects. That's where my heart belonged. And everything has changed because, you don't have to be a leader who sits in a room. And then my infrastructure was of great interest. So that took up a lot of my time. So, I had to lead a couple of lives together, superposed on each other. But the infrastructure and facilities spoke for themselves. But what was the spirit was what we were doing with all that. So this happened. And the canvas for institutional mentoring is pretty huge in a liberal education ecosystem. As I said, beyond the classroom, research and labs and societies, internships, seminars, conferences. So with all this, our students, when they move out, they're professionally oriented already, and that is important. So you're a learning organization. And this is what gave us a rank 1. I think that it was a lot of, this journey was steep, but we got there. Even for the legacy, already well-known, renowned institution, you have to continuously reinvent yourself. So I was asked at one program, where will the next Einstein come from? And I very quickly to BBC said, she will be Leelavati's daughter and she will be from India. Now I have run a little out of time. Can I take 10 minutes more? 10, 15?
Please, ma'am. It's a pleasure hearing you.
So this is what I said. And the moment I said it, anyone can puncture the argument. Where are the women in STEM? Where is the talent pool? This is 2017-18 data from UNESCO. And you see that while in PhD, we have reached parity on an average. In biology, you are doing well, but physics, you are very much under 20%. And so where is the talent pool for Leelavati's daughter to be the next Einstein? So tongue in cheek, we do have to ask very serious questions about what is the facility that we are giving to our talent and so on. So if we were to look at the India data from the ASHE 2019-20 report, you do see that whether it's in undergraduate science, engineering, or IT, and so on, we have in many disciplines hit parity. So except for engineering, where we are still hovering close to 30%, women have done rather well in undergraduate, postgraduate, and PhD level. So engineering and computers tends to be yet something we need to crack. And if you were to look at mainstream disciplines, again, at this level of undergraduate, postgraduate, and PhD, women have done very well. So the talent pool is pretty good, and it is increasing by the year, and so on. And if I were to look at my alma mater's medals and prizes at convocation year from 17 to 2020, just look at whether it is MSc or BSc, the female awardees are right up there. So this is the talent pool from where an Einstein or a Marie Curie can emerge and so on. But then look at what is the faculty profile in the same university. If I look at the colleges, like Miranda House being one of them, there are about 63 colleges, then you see that female faculty dominate, whether it is physics, almost 48 to 52 ratio, mathematics, 62 females as across 38%, and in botany and life sciences, you can see as high as about 80%. So women faculty outnumber men. But the moment you go to postgraduate department, we all know at the university level, this is a picture that is repeated in research institution, then it is the male members of those disciplinary domains who get the jobs, and women are not there. If you see 40% in computer science, is probably not to celebrate. It's not gender parity as we should understand it, because it just shows that men are not willing to come into teaching jobs in computer science, and they leave the field to the women. And it is an area of concern to us, because they'd much rather go out to be entrepreneurs or go into corporate world where the big science is taking place and so on. So the pyramid exists, and the so-called glass ceiling is there when you come to higher academia and so on. Likewise, when you look at leadership, then you see that if the top 100 NRF colleges are to be looked at, then the number of women at number 2 in the top graph is about 45% women principals in the 100 top listed NRF colleges. But if you look at the top 100 universities, only 10 women leaders. In engineering, only 7 women directors of engineering institutions for the top 100 NRF, and so on and so forth. And if you now look at all of the institutes of national importance in higher education, IITs, NITs, ISERs, etc., you will find there's hardly any woman. So in leadership, again, women are not there. So is it that the silo of women leadership and her strategic vision has to be a college, and it can never be higher academia and research? This is very, very worrisome. So if you look at IITs and women faculty there, you will find that they are just about 13% women faculty if you look at old IITs or you look at the new IITs. So new IITs had a chance when they were hiring to hire more women and get gender parity, but they have just stayed the same way as the old IITs. They're replicating the same trends, and having 13% women and aspirational young women who have topped the universities and who have topped IIT exams also, when there's students there, they want to go back as researchers and faculty. So we need strong interventions. So these numbers are very worrisome. And that brings me to the need for equity, diversity, and inclusion. We need to create a level playing field and have more women participate in the workforce, in higher education and research. And we also need to look at that diversity is always useful. I've already made a strong case that economic strength of any institution or country is going to come only when it has a diversity in its workforce. And inclusion is important. I spoke of the 3 E's: equity, excellence, and expansion, and the affirmative action that is underpinning all that thinking. But are we truly inclusive? And this is what it results in. If you look at how, after gaining a PhD, with lack of mentoring and support, as you move into being an assistant professor, promotion into associate professor, you do experience a lot of bias, and there is lack of inclusivity. And this is what is called as, an attrition that takes place along the pipeline and not enough support. This inclusion challenge is what I am now much more interested in. The stereotypes that women face at every level for cultural barriers and stereotypes, implicit bias, and so on and so forth. And that is what Gati, the pilot, gender advancement for transforming institutions, is looking at. So this is the problem of not just data, but the bias and the atmospherics that women face and that we are looking at. So it aims to nudge institutions towards supporting diversity and the full spectrum of talent for their own success and progression. And it is based on 10 key principles. You don't need to read through. It articulates exactly what I have spoken about so far. It is floated as a self-assessment framework where institutions are prodded to a very structured self-assessment application to look at the data, analyze it, examine all their policies and find out where they're going wrong, and ideate to develop actions so that we can provide gender parity or equity, at least for equal opportunity for women for the given talent pool. So about 30 institutions have come in. And if I just again look at the IITs and you look at the red ball, it is less than 50%. This gives you the data on PhDs, postdocs, and research associates and faculty, which I call as research cohort. And there's a long, long way for us to go. And this number, because PhD in large number of women are there, is still much higher. But if you look at only the faculty, which is the violet color, you can see that it is less than 20%. It is actually hovering between 10 to 20%. So long way to go. So we have created an indicator framework, and this is just a flavor. So it is very well structured. We look at the profile of the institution and opportunities for advancement, career progression, and ask institutions to review all the policies and processes and much more importantly, look at the gender climate and organizational culture, the values they need to uphold. And this is where we are looking for an application. So let me now, for lack of time, simply tell you that we are looking at two very important things apart from data: connecting the dots between data, understanding what is the story that the data is telling us, and the kind of data I've already shown you. We are looking at the gender climate of institutions, which is determined by the perceptions and attitudes and expectations of the community. And we want them to reflect on their policies and how the community views those policies and processes, and how the day-to-day functioning of women is impacted, or of any individual in the community is impacted. What is their perspective on what they think is institutional policy on equity, and what are the hierarchical structures and resource allocations and so professional social interactions that impact the functioning of individuals, because that is what is important if institutions have to advance. We also want them to look at their organizational culture, because it is this gender climate and organizational culture that is going to finally break the barriers that women face. So what are the deeply rooted implicit biases that members of the community bring to fore, and how they alter the entire parity structure for which institutions, they theoretical frameworks they speak of upholding equal opportunity, but that doesn't really happen. So this is what we are doing, and we hope that Gati will enable career development, growth, and progression of from early years, handhold to mid, as scientists such as in INYAS move towards early career faculty positions and so on, and they get a fair deal. And again, we want to look at how to improve work-life balance, and then in senior years, nudge towards leadership. Trained capacity building will be important towards leadership years. And finally, we want to see institutions develop SMART, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound plans for implementing Gati, which is for their own good, gender advancement for transforming institutions. So pleasure for me to introduce to you my current Gati PI team, Priyanka Nupur, Shrishti Arora, and Rosa Rawal. And any project has its ups and downs. So we've had people who have joined us for short durations and for a variety of reasons no longer with us. And thank you so much, and sorry for overshooting.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And please don't say overshooting. It was such a great experience to listen to you. In a small talk, you have actually covered almost every part of the topic that we are discussing on. So you, right from the challenges to the solutions, and what practical measures you took to overcome these biases, these stereotypes. Actually, what you told is a very good example of how, if a woman is strong and she has that confidence that she can do something for this problem, so it can work wonders. So thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you very much. I'm sure all the viewers who are watching this and the panelists who are here, they must have learned a lot from you, and they must be waiting to discuss their point of views with you and ask you some queries. So I would first maybe go to Dr. Maitri Trivedi. Dr. Maitri Trivedi, if you can go ahead. She's working as a research assistant in Chandigarh, and she would like to ask you something. Maitri, if you can unmute yourself, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I have just, ma'am, your lecture was very inspiring and very informative. I have just one simple question. So, how can we promote gender equality? Like, not from this level, just the beginning or from the schooling age, or are there any you would like to recommend something to the general public? What steps we can take to promote the gender equality in sciences?
Thanks, Maitri. You have hit the nail on the head. In my talk, I've just shown that, in the early years, undergraduate, postgraduate, up to research, women are outperforming. And they're also outnumbering in many, many areas. And this is going to continue. So, in fact, we'll have to start looking at why there are not enough men coming in at the PhD level. But even with those dwindling numbers, they are capturing all the jobs in the higher education institutions, which means postgraduate and PhD level work where it is done in the research universities and research institutions. So, well, I mean, the talent pool is pretty good because there are enough women with PhD. But for a variety of reasons, I cannot trivialize the matter. Some of those have to do with women's personal choices, but there are other reasons which are institutional. So our concern will never be for personal choices of women, because everyone has a right to decide what is it. Sometimes, after a PhD, you can decide this is not what I want to do all my life and I'm going to look for another job. I mean, that may require more rigor, may require more time, but it could be that, you just want to diversify. So I don't really believe in the leaky pipeline, because many times today women are continuing to work, but they're making a lateral shift towards another area. And so on. Those are personal choices. But at the institutional level also, not enough is being done to provide a level playing field. So Gati is really nudging institutions to look at the evidence that there are not enough women, and look at the evidence in the context of what was the talent pool that applied for a particular job. And so did it statistically reflect in how you shortlisted and invited people for final selection, and so on and so forth. So at every level, there has to be a self-reflection, and there has to be an action plan to overcome. And let me say that our pilot institutions include the top IITs, and they are raring to go. They are really reviewing all their policies and so on and so forth, that because today they understand that you need to give women their rightful place even in those institutions, which are the premier institutions, the top ranked institutions. And it'll take time, but the first step is to reflect and to create policies which are equitable. So there will be things like bias training. What kind of an interview you can take, what kind of questions can be asked, what cannot be asked, and what should be the panelist's profile, and so on and so forth. So that's why I spoke at length about gender climate and organizational culture. These are things which are far more difficult to change. Policies can be there on paper, in letter, but in spirit, what happens? So let us not trivialize and say it's going to just happen overnight in an 18-month pilot. But what has happened is that you have nudged people to reflect and to come up with policies. And elsewhere in international charters, this has actually led to remarkable increase in the number of women in institutions of higher education and research. They're moving almost towards 50%.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Dr. Maitri, do you want to ask another one, or should we move ahead?
No, ma'am, you can move ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So now I think we can move to Dr. Khushwinder. She was trying to ask something. Dr. Khushwinder, are you there? She's working as a faculty at Department of Chemistry in Punjab University. Yeah, she's there. Yeah, Dr. Khushwinder, please unmute yourself first.
Ma'am, first of all, I would like to thank you. It was such an inspiring lecture. And it is really good to know that somebody quitting a permanent job to take over research. So somebody should have a lot of confidence and self-confidence in yourself to do such a thing. Really an inspiring talk. And ma'am, I had one query. I would like to know, how do you feel that action research is going to contribute towards the growth of women in particular?
So what is action research? Action research is you look for a problem in your own environment. So classroom and education research is per se as an action research. How does a student learn, make meaning of what is being taught to the person? You have to unravel the beliefs they bring and what are the patterns of their learning problems, and so on. And consider your classroom as a lab. In fact, teaching institutions are perfect places for carrying out action research. Observe what is happening in your own classroom, and that is action research. And you reflect on it and you find remediations and iteratively keep improving that. That's exactly how education research moves. So in that, you come up with pedagogic innovation, you come up with curriculum development and revision and whatever it is, and you become an active player in education. Otherwise, what happens is a teacher will go pick up a book or pick up a software or whatever it is these days and so on, and go and teach. Now, the person who wrote the book had a different understanding of the material. And there is a signal attenuation when someone else is going to teach that, and so on. So this is where capacity building of teachers is important. It happens at the school level, but not sufficiently. It's not sufficient, because you think that just doing a B.Ed is going to give you both what is called as TPAC now, technology, and you need the procedural knowledge, you need the domain knowledge, and all of this has to be well assimilated to teach anything. But at college level, you think just doing a PhD or a master's gives you all the necessary tools and understandings to become a good teacher. So just having a gift of the gab, or being a naturally gifted speaker may not necessarily make you a good teacher. And so teaching is a tough thing. You have to be deeply engaged. You have to observe your own self and observe your class and convert that into a laboratory. I converted my whole college into a laboratory. And then we were, but then also have to have partners, because you have to build communities. You have to build a critical mass that has a common shared vocabulary and vision. And that is what is called a community of practice. So without that, you can't move forward. You all have to learn together, and you have to stay ahead of the curve, because new technologies will always bring in new challenges and so on. So this is what action research is all about. And I do think that if our education system is going to give us an active learning environment, it will allow students to have a voice. I spoke of a woman with a voice. So which is not that you just come and, teacher comes, turns her back and writes something on the board and goes away. And then, you teach to the exam, and that only those question bank questions are going to come in the exam. That's not going to work. So what you really do need is active engagement. Social sciences, humanities does do it through debate and discourse, where it is well taught. That's what the liberal education atmospheres are. But in sciences, you need to also do that. You need to have, a lot of discussion and debate, and what is called as you do it all the time as a process of science. You design experiments, you design control experiments, you look at how you interpret your data and, how to junk it. And serendipity is important. That's how so much of path-breaking research has happened, because somebody noticed something, whether it was radioactivity or it was penicillin, and also serendipity is very important. So you have to prepare the mind of the student through active engagement and what we call as research-based teaching, in the sense of project-based learning. So when you begin to convert every learning through a project, that will prepare them to be better scientists. And women in particular must learn to work with their hands. Like I trained as a theoretician, but I learned to use a hacksaw, solder, and electronics, and fabricate, and then came up actually with a very low cost, very innovative, first ever sensor-based data acquisition system, with my interface to printer port costing me $1,500. And I had a prototype, and DST said, let's send it for patenting, though we weren't keen because it should be open. And what we managed to do, because I was not trained as an electronic expert, I just thought through a problem and I was able to come up with solutions and so on, and make my software, which was very innovative and very, very frugal and very much optimized. But it covered what my needs were. It covered the whole curriculum, and it covered 20, 30 different types of physical parameters that you would need for a chemistry, biology, or human physiology, or physics lab, or even environment and weather, and all that we made and fabricated through student projects, put it together as a commercial prototype. So we brought in enterprise and entrepreneurship in our projects. So this is how a holistic educational environment can be created.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Actually, experience speaks. You've had such a lot of experience. I was thinking that when you were telling that you entered Miranda House probably in 1980. Is that correct? So that was the time when most of us were born, actually.
Yes, and Jurassic ages. I entered Miranda as a student in 1970. 50 years back. So I'm Jurassic ages, but it's my passion. I think it was my unhappiness with the routine stuff. And it's not that when you take these things out on, success is not guaranteed.
Yes.
Yes.
How would you? I never knew that it would attract every single student, that every single student was as dissatisfied as I was with the teaching system, and that we would be friends for a lifetime. So I worked like I would with any collaborator. And so those students of that batch, or even later batches, will always be friends because I'm not play acting. I am their collaborator. And so age doesn't matter, So that is what teaching has to be all about. And when you take on anything, this is, or when I came back to Miranda House, I thought that, well, I am not the person who will be an administrator. In 6 months or 6 weeks, somebody will throw me out and make such a bad principal. But it turned out that, a role doesn't have to fit you. You have to redefine the role. That's true in education. That's true in leadership. And so it took time to build my community at Miranda House, where everybody would be on the same page, but we built it. We became a learning organization. And we were all, we had the same objective, which was, how do we teach better? How do we give better opportunities to our women students? So that's a mission, it's a passion.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Dr. Jyoti, you can unmute yourself.
Yes.
Dr. Jyoti is also working and researching in the area of organic chemistry at Chandigarh. So, Dr. Jyoti, yeah.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your wonderful lecture and then giving us opportunity to talk and to discuss all these things with you. So, ma'am, I have two things to say or to discuss. That what you feel, what is the major challenge that we as a woman are trapped within our thinking that, okay, our primary duty is to do these household works. Whenever we are given a chance, then we always give the priority to this thing. Of course, we must do, but still, or the other person who stops us to achieve those things because they said to us that it is your primary duty. Because I feel this happens when we are at the age of 14 and 15, when we start to think about our career. Then only our environment around us tell us, okay, your primary duty is household things, so that's why you must opt this field, not that field. And I think that this reflects when we see that graph in science field, then why girls don't opt that options in even maximum places. You will see that they would be called, you take the social science or you take the art stream rather than the science stream. So first thing is that one, I want to understand that thing. And the second thing, when there are very few women who achieve that goal, who will do PhD, doctorate or other engineering degrees, but when they go for the job, then the another big problem is there. They are not given the opportunity because they are female and they will get married eventually, or they are already married. If they are already married, they have to take care of their kids, so they will not be able to give that much time to the organization. Or if they are not married, when they will get married, they have to do all this job. So I feel that is a bigger problem, that whoever is getting that degree and top the university, still they are not getting the job because of this disparity of the hiring committee, that they don't give that opportunity. And this is, I am saying, as you also know, of course you are so much experienced, even the people, even the female friends around me, we always discuss all these things. So I think that in that committee also there should be, I think 20% member of the women hiring person must be there, so that at least they just avoid this kind of the situation. And it happens always, every time. That's why if you will see In PhD also, so many female candidates are working better. But when it comes to the job, then ratio is very, very less, like less than 10%. So
Yes,
these two
this is
things.
what the data showed. So may I come in now?
Yes,
So,
ma'am.
Yes,
I
Yes.
wanted to actually go back and replay this, your own statements. When you sit back by yourself, replay all of it.
Yes.
And within your questions, you have also provided certain analysis and your own viewpoint on it. And many of your answers of one type of answer is already there, which of course can be summarized as that this is conditioning, social conditioning, and we have
Yes,
been
ma'am.
conditioned
Yes.
to think it is our primary responsibility and so on. Now, that is a problem that you alone can handle. How you have been conditioned is something, those shackles you alone will be able to handle. But of course, your environment and others will lead you up that path to find a different voice and a different language to describe and find your own solutions. So education can play a very strong role, and women colleges like ours have played very strong role in creating peer perceptions of what is my role in life. And it
Yes.
is
Yes.
not to say that we are shying away from care responsibilities and so on and so forth. In fact, everyone makes time for that. But what education can also provide you is, one, very strong foundations. So that has been something that I've been very clear about, that if there were gaps in my own education, I have to give to my students very strong foundations. I have to give them early opportunities for experiencing the joy of professional science. How does a PhD student really enjoy that? And also give that flavor to them early enough. Give them these knowledge of opportunities that are there, so that early enough they define a value system for themselves. They define a passion, they discover a passion, and then today's students, they are outperforming. They will find the very best university in the world where they can go and pursue their own dream. So you have to strengthen their dreams. So this is what I mean by, we are all coming from, rooted from our families. Some of them, that's why I said demographics are such. Some of them are first generation learners. They even have to learn language again when they come, let us say, from somewhere in any part of the country, be it south or be it northeast, be it the hinterlands or whatever. They have to find all that. They have to develop the confidence. They have to develop the soft skills. So this is what should be the goal of education, that the woman is able to understand what is it she wants in life. Once you understand that and you have good foundational skills, and you also have an aspiration for which you are working, then you will be able to handle societal pressures better. It is when you're not so confident that you will have a little shaky start. That's one part of the jigsaw. There are many parts of the jigsaw. The other thing is you need a break. But those breaks, what they should be at institutional level, that's what Gati is trying to work on. Gati is saying that we need to also change the institutional atmosphere, gender, climate. Their policies need to be looked at. They need to look at how recruitment takes place, how much of hand-holding and mentoring takes place of early career researchers and faculty. And because time is flying by and biology and professional needs clash at a particular time. So it's a complex problem. There are many pieces of the jigsaw. I will never trivialize the problem and say that one program, intervention program like Gati, or one chat with anybody is going to change it. So this is something like, you have to provide an entire ecosystem throughout one's life, that women begin to think differently, but men also begin to think differently about the societal role. So it is a complex societal problem. But things are changing, and they're changing more so because everybody today requires that, everyone wants a good life, therefore everybody got to work. And governments are also talking now about why should women have unpaid care responsibility. It should be counted in your national GDP. And I mean, in your national accounting processes, that if a woman has done unpaid household work or care responsibility, and if she were to employ someone to take care of the child or to have the paid care duty, you know how expensive it's going to be? And that should be what should be factored in as part of that thing. So the whole way of looking at economics will change when you say that you have to have equal pay for equal work, and then equal work as well, you know. But we are right now talking of equity, which is giving equal opportunity, because the talent pool also has to come forward. If we have 60% women who have done PhD in life sciences, they need to come forward and apply for those jobs, and then also whatever it takes, because research is demanding, you know. So difference between a job and a profession is the passion you bring to it.
Right.
And women have to bring that passion, and then there are enough number of women who are role models.
True. In line with that question, actually, ma'am, there's one question in YouTube chat box by Professor Archana Bhatnagar. She's saying that talking of higher positions, glass ceiling exists and can say that it looks like a Herculean task to a man. Much of it you have already answered, actually. If you want to add something to it, ma'am, to this question.
So we are asking in Gati institutions to look at how heads of departments, etc., you know, how much equity is there in those processes of selection. There is something called being gender responsive, gender sensitized. So institutions have to be gender responsive, you know. So we are not going to say that be gender blind, that both male and female will be judged by the same set of rules. They cannot be, because the last discussion that we've just had shows that, you know, we live our lives with, well, I mean, society has given women certain other roles and so on and so forth. So increasingly, women also must come forward. There should be leadership training for them. Like I've said, from early enough years, if you aspire big and dream big, and you have strong foundational skills and soft skills and people skills, all those skills needed for leadership, then you will discover that you can do it and you will not hesitate. There is also in women certain hesitancy in taking on these positions. Some of this could be because of the care responsibilities they have at home, or that it may need lateral mobility, that you may get a leadership role but in a different city, so you may not want to travel, and you may give that up, and so on. But leadership training is important. But institutions also increasingly must bring women in decision making positions, because when you serve on decision making positions, then leadership comes. Like Nishima is now, you know, an expert at organizing these meetings and hunting for a speaker and convincing them that they must come and so on. It takes time, and it is beyond the call of duty. It goes late into the night, often on 2 weekends and so on, but she is doing it. So that is a leadership of a kind. And as you move on, and you know, so you assemble your skills through these kind of activities, and network, collaborate, and discuss, reflect, and say how we could do things better, or how problem solving can be different. So I think in institutions, we should be able to network both men and women together collaboratively, to learn together. And not just that, you know, men have the boys club and the women are no longer there after the 9 to 5 job and conferences. And also we're also suggesting in Gati that socials and other things should be held at a time where women can also participate. It should not be that, you know, these are only for men late night and all, because everything contributes to leadership, and delegation of responsibility, and shadowing somebody in leadership role helps. So, you know, there are many ways of doing it.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. So the last question we'll be taking up from the YouTube is by Ms. Nannu Singh. She's asking, do you think is there any discrimination with the women in science when it comes to the appointment on higher posts? That I think partly you've answered, or on big funding projects? So this is something I also wanted to ask you, that is there any discrimination that is there when there is this question of funding projects?
Okay, so data shows not enough women getting it. Now, what is the reason behind that? Underpinning reason, I do not want to generalize. But
Okay.
the data shows that we need to unravel the cause. And that is exactly what evidence-based policy making is all about. So evidence-based policy making shows women are not getting enough, either they're not applying enough or they're not getting enough, or their projects have to be, therefore there needs to be more training also imparted both to men and women to write award-winning projects, and whatever it takes to make success out of it. So there are many, many dimensions to all these questions. But since the data shows not enough women are there, therefore state's intervention is needed. And that is why some schemes like Power Serb, etc., are also looking at giving grants to women, but they can be more liberal and so on. You know, like when I got my first 50,000 grant, and that too for an education research project, I was handpicked almost, you know.
Okay.
I was told that, you know, I mean, take this on and do it. Now, Gati also is it, take this on. And, you know, I mean, I'm not from women's studies or gender studies. I've just been, well, I've been all throughout in women institutions, school, college, teaching, and all that, with, of course, never this being a cloister, we interacted and networked with all kinds of institutions and people. But you have to overcome your hesitancy and take the plunge. When you take the plunge, you never know whether you'll be able to do it. But then whatever it takes. So Gati is an operable document. It's an operable schema. You know, so we are not approaching it in a sense of, so it is a highly doable exercise.
That's what is needed.
Policy document, you know, so I'm not commenting on, it is for institutions to unravel what the causes are. We are doing research background, which we make available. So this is where we have to be problem solvers. And even social issues need problem solving skills, but they need perseverance, they need resilience, they need flexibility. Institutions need new models. So women at some point in their life, and maybe various points in life, will need flexible timings. And today the pandemic has shown that
us.
it worked very well. So new models of establishing institutions, new models and ways of working, which can be highly successful.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. And I think the Gati program is going to be a game changer.
I hope so.
Yeah, we also, and we wish you all the very best for this Gati program. And oh, okay, so there's one last question from Shilpa. We are talking about gender parity at many levels, but still in society, discrimination is there, which makes women to take career not of their choice, but career which suits to their family. How can this be resolved that women should be free to take career of their choice? Yeah, I think it's more upon the women. So she has already answered this.
I know it's a difficult question. Now, I mean, I can go back 2 steps and say that let us say admission to a course, medicine, engineering, or let us say physics honors or biotechnology or whatever, also depends on your cracking a particular exam or getting a certain baseline marks. Now, if you don't get something of your choice, you have to have the resilience to make a success of something different, and so on, you know. So sometimes it's too early to be straight jacketed that I have to do only this, and beyond that I'm a frustrated being. No, because innovation can happen in so many areas and so on and so forth. So that is one thing that is important. We're already talking of institutional reformation and you know, institutions to become harbingers of change. This is why it's called advancement for transforming institutions for their own good. Institutions need to transform themselves for their own good by taking more women. And that's where diversity will add value to all their functioning. So this is all I can say at the moment, but many answers we have to find. And we don't have to be harsh on ourselves if at some point in life we have to take decisions which are driven by our own preferences for our family and all. But at the same time, we should not be exploited. We should always be able to think things through. For that, you need support structures, both
Right.
societal and professional and collaborative and networks. So all that is important. And be flexible. If you're 2-3 years, you're out of the system, come back, because just be a learner all your life and don't take things like, it has to be linear or sequential and all. It's a complex game. So I said connecting the dots to create patterns is important. You don't have everything going linearly. It's a non-linear world.
There's more fun in entropy.
Yeah, no, and
in disorder.
The reason I spoke of those women entrepreneurs and all, and the whole life process of women, they are naturally very adept at non-linear pattern making.
Yeah. Right.
So why not also for your career?
Yeah, and most of the times, women think that what others will think. So what I drew from your presentation was that one should be busy so that she has no time to think what others will think. When I entered into this engineering institute, I came up with, I had couple of projects, and others would say that you're trying to build up a lab in an engineering institute despite being a woman. We don't think you can do that. And research project, maybe you have got it from someone, or maybe your husband might have helped you or something. I said that can't it be the other way around? Maybe I was the one who helped my husband. Who knows? So, people always have these stereotypes in their mind. I think the best way is to ignore them, not to think about it. After certain point of time, people will definitely understand that it is your worth, your credentials, and it is not always that women can do something with the help of a man. Sometimes it can be the other way around also.
So sometimes, education and training is needed. So one of the packages we are making is obvious bias training. You need the language so that when you are sitting, let us say in an interview, and as a part of selection panel or as a candidate, you're able to identify this is the kind of bias that is being used and have to call it out. Or when you're being bullied, to be able to call out. So, what are the policies and structures for, say, sexual harassment? They need to be implemented for ragging or anti-bullying, or for student and power relationships, that is, a student and a faculty supervisor, and so on. So, policies for all have to be there. Whatever you may think in your personal life, once you are part of an institution and a professional environment, you have to live the values of the institution, and constitutional values are very strong. Constitution defines that everybody has right to dignity and safety, security. So institutions are duty bound to provide all that. So this is exactly what we are working on. And both men and women need to be what is called gender sensitized.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
Sensitization should be taken seriously by both men and women. And let us begin discussions, discourse, arguments, whatever it is, and that we agree that institutions will have to have a institutional value system in place. And I don't care what you think, but once you begin to work on that, it will transform everybody's life, because you can't go back home and have another set of values. You will be transformed, both men and women.
Right, ma'am. Right. That is true. Thank you so much, ma'am. Actually, I think we can go on and on discussing. It's a pleasure actually discussing.
I think,
Yeah. I think I'll try to wind it up now. Though this is actually one of those few times that I really don't want to end it. I want to keep on discussing with you and learning from you, but I'll just start the vote of thanks now. So thank you so much, ma'am. First of all, I need to tell it to everyone that ma'am was having a really hectic schedule, and but she still took out time. And indeed, from the core of my heart, thank you very much, ma'am, for taking out time. Your talk was actually an eye opener. The data you showed, the real figures, the actual state of what is going on. So it was more of a practical thing that we could, it was kind of an experiment for us, what you were saying, that the way you teach, you actually showed in your presentation, it was teaching plus your research. It was completely a full sort of a research paper, I should say. So everything combining to one. So it was a pleasure hearing to you. Thank you so much. And I would really like to first of all thank INYAS and Punjab University, the chair of INYAS, Dr. Chandrasekhar Sharma. Today he is not joining us because of some problem, but otherwise I think he would love to listen to you. And thank you so much, INYAS, for giving us this opportunity, for giving us the platform to discuss, and for letting us have these Women in Science lectures every month. Thank you to the Vice Chancellor of Punjab University for the active support that he gives us for um, uh, bringing out people, bringing out scientists from various corners of our country also, and outside the country also, so that all the women faculty, the research scholars can be benefited from it. And thank you so much to all the panelists who took out time to come over here and have this wonderful discussion with ma'am. And ma'am, really looking forward to have a physical interaction with you when possible. We are actually thinking of starting offline webinar, offline lectures now. So please, ma'am, do come here on to Chandigarh, Punjab University. We would love to host you here. And again, thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, panelists.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Nishima, and all of you on the panel and audience that we can't see. Thank you, and namaste.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to the YouTube audience as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madhvi. Thank you so much, Madhvi.